The story of the St. George Temple and that of the St. George East Stake Center are inseparably connected. In the beginning, the area was part of a large marsh associated with the Virgin River. The early pioneers had chosen to situate their homes and the tabernacle on higher, drier ground. But when Brigham Young went with a group of brethren, including Robert Gardner Jr., he told them that the Lord wanted them to build the temple in a very different location. He wanted them to build it in the middle of that marsh. The pioneers believed Brigham Young was a prophet, and with faith and determination, they went to work, hauling large stones from a quarry not far away and pounding them deep into the marshy ground until a solid footing was finally made. According to the pioneers and their posterity, Brigham Young told the people that the temple was to be built in that location because one day it would be in the center of the town. They believed him, although generations would come and go before that prophecy was finally realized.
Well, it was all farms other than about a block or two east of the temple when I first came here.
I was so far out at that time I couldn't get a telephone. And there wasn't the high school down there. There wasn't anything below me.
But there is a spirit in this valley, and I haven't felt it anywhere I have ever been. And it has so amused me, I wanted to stay long enough till I could figure out what it was saying. So she said, well, did you figure it out? He said, yes, it's calling people here. Indeed, we have watched that. And you talk to the Jewel Bringhurst and the Ruth Squires, the people who have watched it almost everything in their lifetime, from the time the temple was way out of town to the time the prophecy of Brigham Young has been fulfilled, that it will be the center of town, has taken place in their lifetime.
Today, it is easy for us to see that Brigham Young's prophecy has come true. Today, the St. George Temple is located in the midst of a large and beautiful city, in just the right place. And right next door is the St. George East Stake Center. When the pioneers built the temple, the land upon which the St. George East Stake Center now stands was largely a vacant lot, used only for horses and wagons in the early days. For over 100 years, the temple stood nearly on the outskirts of town.
Where the Stake Center is now was a wheat field or some kind of a grain field, and it was kind of fun to play over there because the grain was so high that you could just get down on your hands and knees and be completely hidden.
The kids used to sleigh ride off the hospital hill. It was just half a block past where the Stake Center is.
One of the kids that we ran around with had a two-seated car, and after MIA, we'd all pile in it and sit 3 or 4 deep and come over here to the hospital hill, and everybody knew where the hospital hill was. And it was just one big dip down, and we'd go down and bump our heads on the top of the car. And one time we were up on the main boulevard, only it wasn't the boulevard then. And we got stopped for having too many in that car. The seats were little. They weren't very big, so we'd sit 2 or 3 on a seat and pile up. But it was fun.
With his hands on the steering wheel going down the road, and when a car passed, his fingers would go up like that, and it was kind of like he knew everybody in town, and he'd wave at everybody, and he'd be going around down the road and see somebody you didn't know, and you'd look and say, wonder who that was. You know? And so you know, that's different. And I can, you know, you go to the store now and it's rare that you see somebody you know. And back in those days, you pretty well knew everyone. And
in the 1960s, the area across from the temple was still largely vacant and available to build a new chapel on. However, at that time, if a new chapel was to be built, the members had to raise a large portion of the money themselves. This was done through direct donations and also through fundraisers.
When the chapel was being built, we had to earn the money for it. And we had bazaars and ward dinners and everything like that.
The Relief Society did their part by hosting bazaars where various goods and items were for sale.
And the bazaars, that's the fun part, even though that too was a lot of work. In our monthly homemaking meetings, we would always have a quilt on to tie for the bazaars, and a lot of the activities that we were into crafts a lot at that time, and we'd make things that would be sold at the bazaars, and the sisters at home would maybe embroidery pillowcases and crochet lace on the edges and make a lot of things at home that were also donated at the bazaars. We even had a quilt on every Monday afternoon to work on, to provide more quilts for the bazaar. And I recall one year, I think we made about $600 just on the sale of the quilts alone, that bazaar, which was quite a bit of money at that time. Like everything in Relief Society, it was a lot of work, but a lot of satisfaction, and I felt really bad when they discontinued the bazaars. It's the association with people. You get close to people as you work with them in the different organizations, and the friendships and camaraderie.
But eventually, enough money had been raised that a chapel could be built. The church was looking for a contractor that they knew could do the job. J. Alton Bigelow was that man. They arrived here in January 1963 and prepared to construct the St. George East Stake Center. The groundbreaking was held April 8, 1963, but for various reasons, work did not commence until the middle of June of that year. Most of the work done on this chapel, which was to be one of the largest chapels ever built by the church at that time, was done by volunteer workers. Brother Bigelow was very concerned that the East Stake Center Chapel be built in just the right way. He told his family of a time when a load of concrete was delivered to be poured in a supporting wall. The cement was too wet, and he refused to accept it because of its inferior quality. The bricklayers made sure every brick was placed exactly as it should have been. It was the same with the plumbers and the electricians. This was the Lord's work. Alma's daughter, Laree Bigelow Forbes, said, "He saw the hand of the Lord in all the work that took place." Alton Bigelow wrote in his journal, "When it was time to place one of the large steel beams, the flanges on this beam were 1 inch thick and 14 inches wide. It was 48 inches high and 71 plus feet long. It weighed between 10 and 15 tons. Everyone seemed to be concerned as to how I was going to get that large beam in place, and I received a lot of unsolicited advice as to what should be done to accomplish this. I had the bricklayers leave a pocket in the wall 1 inch wider and 4 inches longer than the beam. I was told repeatedly that I could never set that beam in that pocket without shattering the brick wall and other horrible things that could happen. I made all the preparations. There would be a crane there to move the beam from its location on the church grounds. About 1 hour after we hooked onto the beam, it was all safely in place."
Just adjacent to the temple, they backed down that hill, and I don't know whether they were delivering something. I think they were probably delivering lumber or something down in there, and that truck got stuck. It was really muddy, and that truck got stuck, and it was stuck for 2 or 3 days there. And Richard Rogers borrowed a howitzer, a tank from the National Guard, and took it down there and pulled that truck out.
Laree Forbes said, "My father, Alton Bigelow, was a man of faith and confidence. He was directed by the Lord many times in situations like this when man could not see what the Lord directed him to do. He listened, and he was successful. The building was built and began to be used, but it still took quite a while before it was completely paid off. Ruth Squires remembers that it was a great day of celebration when the East Stake Center was paid off and could finally be dedicated.
But I remember the excitement about it. There was an excitement when that stake center was being built. It was fun to watch it going up. It was fun to see it taking place. And it was just an exciting time when that chapel was being built. And then the great excitement when we moved into it, and it was so beautiful and it was so large.
The dedication took place on September 19th, 1965, by Elder Joseph Fielding Smith, president of the Quorum of 12 Apostles at that time. That was an exciting time.
Saturday night before the dedication, he took the ones that were in charge up to the Sugarloaf Cafe to dinner. And we went with him, and we sat across from he and his wife, and he ordered a bowl of warm milk and some bread and crumbled it into it and ate it. And the rest of us had steak. And his wife said that that's what he had every night for his evening meal.
Larry Forbes said, "There was no tower on the chapel when it was built, as the people thought it would detract from the temple. However, 3 years later, a tower was constructed, not on top of the chapel, but to the north side of the north entrance. It did not prove to be a distraction, but was a nice addition to the chapel grounds."
I think the first thing we didn't like about it was it didn't have a steeple. And we couldn't understand why they didn't put a steeple on that building, because we never knew of a church that they didn't put a steeple on, and it looked kind of strange without a steeple. So the people made enough comments about that that I guess they didn't want to put one on it because they didn't want to pull away from the temple, was their reason. So finally they put a steeple to the side, and that wasn't the only chapel they did that on. That was kind of a style of a chapel they built during that period of time.
Fern passed away March 11th, 1983, and Alton lived to be 96 years old, passing away August 14th, 2002. Both funerals were held in the chapel they and so many others had been instrumental in building. The St. George East Stake Center has stood in the shadow of the St. George Temple for over 50 years. It has played a pivotal role in the lives of the members of the St. George East Stake. Countless meetings have taken place in this building, meetings designed to uplift and improve lives. It has been at the center of so many weekly and even daily church meetings, as well as family reunions, 50th wedding celebrations, weddings, wedding receptions, funerals, baptisms, and so much more.
Talk about a lot of the wonderful people who have come and gone. This area has seen so many special people who have lived in this area and have sacrificed so much for the building of the kingdom of God in this area and in their lives, and made many sacrifices to do it. Very noble people, very righteous people, and people who really served one another and made great sacrifices. You would also see lots of fun and happiness that took place in that building. There's been a lot of parties, a lot of ball games, a lot of weddings, ward dinners, bazaars.
Because it is located directly across from the temple, it has also been used by many members in other stakes for special events as well, and, at times, Due to its unique location, sacrament meetings have been held with over 1,100 people in attendance due to the many visitors.
For us that have watched it come up, we feel like it's a beautiful building. And to me, as I've gone through many of the chapels, it's larger than most any chapel you go into. And so I feel really sad that it's coming down, because, like I say, if the walls could talk, when I walk into it, I see faces. I hear voices of the people of the past, and it's like it brings back memories of, because you're in that room. Like it's anything, you go in something that has been part of your life, all the things in the past that you remember taking place in that building, you come back to your mind.
The pioneers have given all of us a legacy of faith, determination, and courage to follow, as did the descendants of the pioneers who built the original East Stake Center. We honor them, for what they have done has been a great blessing in all our lives. We are so grateful for the wonderful men and women who have gone on before, and we are inspired by them. Now we have the opportunity to move forward with faith. And like the pioneers and Alton Bigelow and so many others, we too put our trust in the Lord, and we have faith that He is mindful of us and that in the end, things will work out all right.